Is Hollywood running out of ideas? Let's think about it for a moment. Most of the big blockbuster movies in this day and age are sequels, remakes, or adaptations. The term Marvel Cinematic Universe is probably a term that many people have heard of if they are up to date on the latest in film. There have been so many Marvel movies within the past several years, with at least one coming out per year. The Star Wars franchise has also had a resurgence in the past 5 years due to the newest trilogy, continuing the stories of the original movies. And the new Lion King, a remake of the old classic and reanimated for the modern audience, also hit the box office in 2019. All of these are examples of how Hollywood is not producing as much original content as they could be. So, why are they doing this to us? If film is an art, then why are we being deprived of original material? What can we do as filmmakers to change this, making sure that audiences are seeing new material and not seeing the same movies recycled over and over again? And for audiences, what can you do to make sure that you can get this original material? These are the questions we are going to try and answer. So to start, let's assume there's a small chance that you have not noticed Hollywood's trend in releasing titles that are familiar to audiences. The most popular and discussed example of this is Disney's decision to turn many of their old classics into live-action or reanimated works. Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Maleficent, and Mulan are just a few examples of this recent trend in Disney's lineup of movies. The original titles released by Disney within the past few years have been few and far between. But why exactly is this happening? Well, to put it simply, money. In the case of Disney, these remakes have raked in billions upon billions of dollars at the box office, not to mention the merchandising revenue they bring in because of how recognized these movies are. Remakes, in general, make a lot of money.
The average sequel makes 8 times the average original release.
That's $160 million over the $20 million original. Grown Ups, the Adam Sandler movie, which was rated an abysmal 30 points on Metacritic, received $270 million worldwide. Its sequel, which somehow dropped 11 points, still managed $247 million worldwide. It was a box office hit. Audiences literally had no reason to give Grown Ups 2 a chance, and yet they did.
As you can see, this isn't just the case for Disney movies. This happens for, well, most sequels. People are more willing to spend their money on something they already know. They are more willing to sit through over an hour of their lives if they know exactly what they're sitting through. People don't enjoy wasting their time, so why waste it on something you don't know anything about? Now, let's move on to reason 2. Intellectual property. Intellectual property, or IP for short, is one of the most important cogs in the film industry machine. IP, in its simplest form, can be described as a work or invention that is the result of creativity, such as a manuscript or design, to which one has rights and for which one may apply for a patent, copyright, trademark, etc. It is much easier for studios to create content that they already have the rights to, instead of going out and finding an entirely new piece of art to produce and pay for. This is both cost-efficient and time-efficient for studios. Studios, as a general rule of thumb, are more concerned with producing revenue than they are producing original content. So what studios often do is reuse the material they already have ownership of, fully aware that, so long as they follow up on advertising, people will still go and pay to see their movies. And now with streaming services becoming a mainstream platform where people receive their media, time has become a very vital resource. There is a high and continuous demand for content, and studios just can't keep up with it. We want to watch new material on these streaming services, and we want to watch it now. So studios will produce, well, new material. You know, just in case you couldn't hear the air quotes. Studios don't have to spend as much time creating concepts or seeking for the next biggest screenplay because, well, they already have the material to build off of. Also, let's level with each other for a moment. How willing are you to click on a title that you have never heard anything about? Chances are that if you haven't heard a thing about it, then you won't. There is so much new content being poured onto Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and other streaming services that oftentimes, paralyzed with decisions, people will just go back to watching The Office for the 5th time instead of trying to find something new. They know that they like it. They don't know what is worth watching, and they don't want to waste their time. So, how do we fix this problem? Well, it's a bit of a cheeky workaround, but it's effective nonetheless. Nostalgia. Nostalgia plays a large role in our lives. We like things that are familiar, so we gravitate towards things that are focused around the past. Fashion, music, books, and more already utilize this idea of nostalgia when trying to market their products or services, and oftentimes, they're wildly successful. The idea of vintage clothing is taking popular culture by storm, even if people are just buying used clothes from thrift stores, which, I definitely don't do. People are even buying vinyl records again, a technology that almost died completely with the introduction of the CD. So why not try to utilize this phenomenon with film and even television? Well, Netflix's Stranger Things does this incredibly well. Instead of revamping old material, this series, set up in the 1980s, has an original storyline that uses pop culture references from the 80s to draw in an audience. This is what Hollywood should be doing to encourage the creation of new and original content for their audiences. Now, of course, not everything should be set in the past, but making the material stand out to audiences without relying off of a pre-existing title can be more rewarding in the long run for film as an art form. The great advertising power of nostalgia isn't the only virtue in Hollywood being more open to original ideas. The indie movie scene is killing it with original screenplays, such as Juno, Lady Bird, and Moonlight, so why isn't Big Hollywood doing this as well? Again, big studios are more concerned about making the most money they can. Swiss Army Man made $5.8 million at the box office and had a Rotten Tomatoes score of 71%, while in contrast, Grown Ups 2 made $247 million at box office while having a Rotten Tomatoes score of 7%. Regardless of this human travesty, Hollywood should not be solely concerned about making a cheap buck from these films, especially when they're taking away the artistic integrity of film itself. With this in mind, Hollywood should give more screenwriters the chance to write for the screen. There are a lot of aspiring screenwriters with new and original ideas that have the opportunity to be successful, but they need to be picked up before that can happen. Film is an art, much like paintings, sculptures, and other mediums. I can't speak for you, but I would not want to look at the same painting with a few minute details changed over and over and over again. Unlike paintings, sculptures, and other forms of art, more people are exposed to film and television than any other medium. Many of us have access to watch almost any movie or television series at any moment, so why not take advantage of this luxury? Art should be unique to the people that come together and make it. The main goal of the film industry should not be to make millions upon millions of dollars in profit, because it takes away from the core art of filmmaking. This applies to many aspects of the film industry, but writing is so important because most of the time a script is needed to ensure that a film is created. The filmmaking process doesn't always start at the script, but a film is hard to produce without them. Filmmakers should make films to make themselves feel good. There will be an audience for it. Sure, it might not make as much money, but again, that's not what film should be primarily about. So if you're a filmmaker watching this, do what you want to do. Tell the stories that you want to tell. There is a market for just about everything, and you shouldn't let the overpowering amount of sequels or remakes littering the Hollywood scene dictate what you want to create. Sure, money plays a huge role in filmmaking, but get creative. Most famous filmmakers start off with incredibly small budgets. The Blair Witch Project had a budget of $60,000, and that movie is incredibly successful for its genre and regarded as one of the best horror movies of all time. Creativity is what brought us into this career path, so why not utilize every aspect of it? And if you aren't a filmmaker, you can still help get original content on your screen. Leave reviews for movies that you watch, especially if you see an original movie that you like. Post updates on your social media platforms, praising original content that you've seen. Be more open to watching something new on Netflix instead of starting up round 6 of The Office. And most importantly of all, support your independent filmmakers. Though the studio system should be more open to original ideas, this is likely wishful thinking, considering they're happy just taking away the art from film to make a cheap buck. Support your filmmakers. Support your artists. They are not just making films for themselves, they're making them for you. Oh, and please ask Julia when I'm getting paid. I need to get food this week.